You will be surprised to hear this, Ethan said, smirking just 3 days after our divorce. I'm getting married to someone else. Seriously? I replied, amusement in my voice. Who's this unlucky lady? Meet Vanessa, smart, generous, and not to mention incredibly beautiful, Ethan declared in his smug tone. Vanessa adjusted her hat, and I recognized her, a shock that quickly gave way to a burst of laughter. I tried to compose myself. What? Ethan? Vanessa? He squinted, irritation flickering across his face. What's so funny, huh? He asked, his eyes narrowing. Oh, ridiculous, I managed between gasps of laughter. Good luck to you both. Ethan's irritation grew, but Vanessa stood quietly, her expression unreadable. 3 days, I continued. It took him only 3 days to flaunt his new fiancée in front of me, here on the cracked concrete steps of my parents' suburban home near Seattle. The divorce was fresh, too raw. My parents were inside, probably hearing everything through the thin walls. Megan was at school, thankfully spared from this spectacle. Ethan stepped closer, his voice lowering. You're just pissed, he hissed. Vanessa is a real woman, unlike you. I don't remember her being that, I replied, locking eyes with Vanessa. Her face remained straight, but a hint of discomfort flashed in her eyes. Good for you, Ethan, was all I managed before turning towards the door, pushing it open. Inside, my mother Alice was setting the table for lunch while Dad was going through the newspaper. You all right, sweetie? Mom asked without looking up, sensing the tension. I guess Ethan's getting married, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Dad looked up, squinting. Already? Who's the girl? Vanessa Brooks, I said, smirking at the recognition on Dad's face. He knew Vanessa from my stories, from those days when she was just a disruptive force in the workplace. Good Lord, Dad muttered, shaking his head. That poor idiot deserves her. I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me as I started setting out chairs around the table. The drama wasn't over, but today it felt like I had won a small battle. The conversation at lunch table shifted to lighter topics. Megan's upcoming school event, Dad's new fishing hobby, Mom's embroidery projects. They offered a comforting aura, way different from the chaos Ethan brought into my life. Later, Megan burst through the door, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Mom, guess what? I got the lead role in the play. That's incredible, Meg, I exclaimed, pulling her into a tight hug. I'm so proud of you. Her smile widened. Do you think Dad will come to see me? At that moment, a lump formed in my throat. I'm sure he will, honey, I managed to say. Megan's happiness was all that mattered now. Ethan's behavior and Vanessa's manipulations, none of it could dim the joy in my daughter's eyes. After putting Megan to bed, I settled by the window, gazing out into the darkness. The calm of the suburban night felt almost taunting, contrasting sharply with the turmoil within. Yet the presence of my parents, unwavering and supportive, anchored me. As I lay in bed, the impending storm of Vanessa and Ethan's engagement loomed large, but I felt a newfound resolve. Their self-assured expressions flashed through my mind, but this time they didn't unsettle me. I had my daughter to shield, a life to reconstruct, and a strength I hadn't fully recognized until now. The drama was unfolding, but I refused to retreat. Not now, and certainly not ever. The next morning, I found myself replaying what happened yesterday while brewing coffee. My parents were already up, Mom fixing a tear in Megan's dress, Dad fiddling with the radio. Megan stood near them, excitedly chatting about her upcoming play. Morning, honey, Mom greeted, her eyes still on her task. As good as it can get, I sighed, pouring myself a cup of coffee. Its warmth comforted me against the early autumn chill. Just as I was about to sit down, a notification popped up. A message from Mark Davis, my coworker and good friend. "Coffee later. You look like you could use a break." I slightly smiled and quickly replied with a "see you at noon." "Going to work?" Dad inquired, folding the newspaper. "Not really, just meeting Mark for coffee," I explained. "To catch up." "Mark is a good guy," Dad commented. "Rough week?" Mark asked, raising an eyebrow as he approached our table at the familiar cafe, 2 steaming cups in hand. "You could say that," I sighed, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Ethan's getting married, 3 days after our divorce." Mark winced sympathetically. "Ouch. That's tough. To who?" "To Vanessa, the Vanessa Brooks I warned you about. He even brought her to my parents' house just to show off." I said, "Unbelievable." Mark muttered, "Why Vanessa of all people? Beats me." "Maybe because he's blinded by her so-called beauty and charm." Mark leaned in, his voice serious. "You know she's bad news, right? Manipulative, deceiving," I said, interrupting him. "I know she acts very well." As we talked, flashbacks of our memories started to play. The years when Ethan came rushing back, his irresponsibility, the nights he'd come home late reeking like alcohol, the instances where I had to clean up his messes, both figuratively and literally. One evening stood out. When he came home way past midnight, his excuses were unconvincing. I had confronted him, I said, arms crossed, blocking the doorway. "Didn't you promise you'd be home to help Megan?" I asked. "Where were you?" he replied, avoiding my eyes. "Working late." His phone buzzed then, and as he turned it to silence, a glimpse of a message from Vanessa caught my eye. Suspicion arised, but the evidence was not enough for a real argument. Mark's voice pulled me back to the present. "You all right?" Yes," I said, shaking off the memories. "Just thinking about the past." "That guy didn't deserve you," Mark said, his tone unwavering. "And Vanessa, we know what she's like." "I know, Mark, but I need to keep it together for Megan." "Don't worry," he assured. "You're stronger than you think." Back home, I found Mom preparing dinner while Dad and Megan were in the living room, playing board games. The sight brought a fleeting sense of peace, a calm before the storm I knew was brewing. As we settled in, I resolved to stay vigilant. Ethan's recklessness and Vanessa's deceit wouldn't go unchecked. More challenges lay ahead, but surrounded by my family and supported by friends like Mark, I felt ready. We sat down for dinner, laughter and conversation flowing easily. For a moment, everything seemed normal. It was these small moments of joy I live for, preparing my heart for the battles yet to come. While washing dishes after dinner, I couldn't shake the growing suspicion. Ethan's tardiness and strange behavior kept replaying in my mind. The text message from Vanessa, undeniable evidence of betrayal, waited until the house quieted before taking action. I quietly entered the study where Ethan's outdated laptop sat idle. It was easy to guess his password, Megan's birthday, and a series of his favorite numbers. Moments later, I gained access. Emails from Vanessa flooded his inbox. Reading their exchanges, the reality of their affair hit me like a blow to the stomach. He claimed he was working late, making sacrifices for our future. It was all a facade. Instead, he was plotting with Vanessa, celebrating their deceit at my expense. My hands trembled as I clicked through the evidence, photos and personal messages. Fury mixed with heartbreak welled up inside me, leaving a bitter taste and a burning need for answers. How could he have sunk so low? Just then, soft footsteps echoed down the hall. Hastily closing the laptop, I forced a smile as she peeked into the room. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked, her innocent eyes full of concern. "Yes, sweetie," I reassured her, guiding her back to bed. "Just finishing up some work." After tucking her in, I returned to the office, resolved to confront Ethan. I sat there, anticipation and anger making my skin crawl. Hours passed until I heard the familiar jingle of his keys. "You're still awake," he remarked, surprised to see me. "We need to talk, Ethan," I said firmly, my voice steady. "About Vanessa." Ethan's expression shifted from surprise to defensiveness. "What's this about, Laura?" "I know everything," I said, clicking open his laptop and showing him the messages. "You've been lying to me." "It's not what it seems," he stammered, his face flushing with guilt. "Really? So these messages are just innocent chats? You never meant to hurt me?" I repeated incredulously. "It just happened. I never meant to hurt you," he pleaded, his excuses faltering. "Ethan, you've been deceiving us both." Ethan fell silent, unable to meet my gaze. He knew there was no way out of this. "Megan deserves better," I whispered, the weight of my words sinking in. "We both do." I'm sorry," he muttered weakly. "Sorry doesn't erase what you've done," I said, turning away. "You should pack your things. I'll talk to Megan in the morning." Days turned into weeks as tension lingered in the household. Ethan moved to a small apartment, rarely visiting. Megan missed her father, and explaining the situation to her was one of the hardest conversations I had ever had. One afternoon, while working in the garden with Mom, I received a call from Jennifer Carter, an old friend who still worked with Vanessa. She filled in some missing pieces, exposing Vanessa's deceitful nature with tales of affairs, manipulation, and betrayal. "She used to climb the corporate ladder. Be careful. She'll ruin Ethan too. Mark my words," Jennifer said. "Thank you, Jennifer," I replied, feeling a strange sense of validation. This information was crucial for me to hear. After hanging up, I noticed Mark approaching our house. He waved, and I waved back, grateful for his steadfast presence. I knew I needed his support as I prepared for the storm Ethan and Vanessa would undoubtedly bring. With my family standing strong behind me and a growing sense of inner strength, I readied myself for the challenges ahead. As the sun set, casting a golden hue over our suburb, determination surged within me. This wasn't merely about retaliation. It was about reclaiming my life and ensuring Megan's happiness. The obstacles ahead would be formidable, but I was resolute. In the ensuing days, Ethan's erratic visits became a predictable routine. Each time, it followed the same script. He'd arrive late, make hollow promises to Megan, and depart before I could confront him about his obligations. One evening, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway caught my attention. Ethan stumbled out, reeking of alcohol, barely steady on his feet. Megan rushed to him, her eyes bright with joy. "Daddy?" she exclaimed, wrapping her arms around his legs. "Hey, princess," he slurred, patting her head. "How's Daddy's girl?" "Megan, it's time for bed," I intervened, concern lacing my voice. "But Daddy just got here," Megan protested. "No arguments, sweetheart," I said firmly, guiding her to her room. "We'll talk tomorrow." Ethan collapsed onto the couch in the living room. "Laura, you need to relax," he jabbed, his words slurred. "Do you even hear yourself?" I retorted, frustration evident. "Showing up drunk, barely able to stand. How is any of this acceptable?" "You don't get it, okay?" he snapped, struggling to his feet. "Work is unbearable. I need a break." "This isn't an escape. This is irresponsible," I shot back firmly. "You're falling apart right in front of Megan. You think she doesn't see it?" Ethan's eyes narrowed, anger flashing behind them. "Vanessa doesn't criticize me. Maybe that's why I'm with her." "Oh, because she lets you act recklessly?" I scoffed, my voice rising. He stumbled toward the door, turning back with a glare. "You'll regret pushing me away, Laura. Remember my words." The door slammed shut, the sound reverberating through the silent house. I sank onto the couch, seething with anger. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about shielding Megan from her father's destructive behavior. The next morning, Mark arrived with coffee in hand, his expression filled with concern. "Rough night?" he asked gently, settling beside me at the kitchen table. "Ethan showed up drunk," I said, taking a grateful sip. "He ranted about Vanessa and left Megan devastated." Mark shook his head in disbelief. "He's spiraling. You should consider talking to a lawyer about full custody. Megan deserves better than this." "I think you're right," I nodded, feeling a surge of determination. "I'll start looking into it." "I can help you find a good lawyer," he offered, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to face this alone." Just then, Megan rushed into the kitchen, proudly displaying a drawing she had made. "Look, Mom, it's our family." I smiled warmly at her, holding back tears. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Thank you." As Megan hugged me tightly, I knew I had to protect her from the turmoil Ethan was causing. With Mark's support and a clear plan ahead, I felt ready to navigate the challenges ahead and ensure Megan's well-being above all else. Later, while Megan was at school, I called Jennifer to gather more intelligence about Vanessa. "I need to know everything, Jennifer. Any skeletons in Vanessa's closet could be valuable." "Well, she got caught manipulating budget reports once," Jennifer revealed. "She only kept her job by throwing someone else under the..." I took notes, each piece of information adding depth to my strategy. That evening, Ethan showed up unexpectedly again, this time sober but defensive. "I want to make things right," he began, his eyes darting nervously. "Words mean nothing without action, Ethan," I replied icily. "Prove it. I'll be here every day. Spend time with Megan. Be a better father." Giving him a stern look, I added, "Actions will speak for you." As the days passed, Ethan's promises remained empty. His visits were sporadic, filled with excuses. Vanessa's influence loomed large, manipulating him like a puppeteer from the shadows. Megan's disappointment grew, fueling my determination. Determined to shield my daughter and start afresh, armed with every damning detail from Jennifer, I sought legal advice. The next phase of the battle had begun. Ethan and Vanessa had underestimated me, and that was their gravest error. A sudden knock at the door startled me. It was 9 p.m., and unexpected visitors at the hour rarely brought good news. I hurried to answer it, finding Ethan standing there with an odd smile on his face. "What is it now, Ethan?" I asked in a hushed voice, mindful of Megan sleeping. "I need to talk, Laura," he said urgently, pushing past me into the hallway. "It's important." I closed the door and followed him to the living room. "Fine, talk, but make it quick." "I've been reflecting," Ethan began, his demeanor unusually serious. "About everything. Us, Megan, Vanessa." He paused, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "Laura, I want a divorce." The words hung heavily in the air, shocking and weighty. While our marriage was already dead, hearing him say it like a brutal blow. "Divorce?" I echoed, stunned. "And what about Megan?" "I want to stay involved, but Vanessa..." Ethan trailed off, biting his lip. "Vanessa wants a fresh start, doesn't she?" "A clean slate, no baggage, no ties to your past," I interjected, my voice tinged with rising emotion. Ethan winced at my harsh tone. "Just her, Laura. You're distant, unresponsive. I can't live like this," he explained. A bitter laugh escaped me. "Distant and unresponsive? Have you forgotten who caused all this? You and Vanessa destroyed everything. But fine, you want a divorce. I won't contest it, but I'm keeping full custody of Megan." "Laura, be reasonable." "Shared custody is fair." "Fair?" I hissed. "How's this fair? You come and go as you please, missing important moments in Megan's life, and now you want to disrupt her world for Vanessa's convenience." "This isn't just about Vanessa," Ethan shouted, losing his composure. "I deserve to find happiness too." "Your happiness was my priority, Ethan, but now Megan's well-being is all that matters," I stated firmly, taking a step closer and lowering my voice. If you want to be part of her life, prove it. Be the father she deserves. Otherwise, don't bother us. Ethan's resolve seemed to waver, but he quickly masked it with annoyance. I'll consult my lawyer, he said curtly. Do that, I replied, showing him to the door. After he left, I sat down, feeling a mix of relief and dread. Divorce meant freedom from Ethan's unpredictability, but also a legal battle looking forward to. Megan would need reassurance, stability, and I was determined to provide it. The next day, I contacted the lawyer, setting the wheels in motion. That evening, as I prepared dinner, Megan approached, her face twisted in confusion. Mom, is Dad mad at us? She asked softly. I knelt down to her level, gently smoothing her hair. No, honey, Dad just has a lot on his mind, I reassured her. But no matter what happens, we'll always be a family. She nodded, but uncertainty lingered in her eyes. Later, Mark swung by, his concern evident. Heard about the divorce, he mentioned, pulling up a chair. How are you holding up? Just trying to manage, I replied, stirring the pot on the stove. My priority. He nodded, admiration in his eyes. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for, Laura. Remember that. Mark's words were comforting. His support meant the world, more than I could express. As days turned into weeks, papers were filed and court dates set. Ethan's promises remained just that, broken and empty. During one of Ethan's visits, Vanessa joined him. Her arrogant demeanor was infuriating. Nice place, Laura, she commented, casting a disdainful look around. Not as luxurious as your fantasy land, I'm sure. Your commentary is unwelcome, I responded coldly. You never let things go, huh? She fired back. I met her gaze, my voice icy. When it involves my daughter, no, I won't let anything slide. As they left, Ethan's uncertainty was palpable. Vanessa's hold on him was strong, but it wouldn't last. I was playing the long game, ensuring every move protected Megan and exposed Vanessa for who she really was. The legal battle was just starting, but with Mark, Jennifer, and my parents by my side, I knew we'd emerge stronger. I braced for the storm, ready to fight for what mattered most, the safety and happiness of my daughter. A few days after filing for divorce, I was taking out the trash when Ethan's car pulled into the driveway. He stepped out, wearing a grim expression, with Vanessa trailing behind. Here we go, I muttered under my breath, preparing for another confrontation. Ethan knocked sharply on the door, then noticed me by the garage. He gestured for Vanessa to follow as they approached. Laura, we need to talk about Megan's custody, Ethan said tersely. Now what's so urgent that it couldn't wait until our court date? I asked, crossing my arms. Vanessa cut in, her tone dripping with false concern. We just want what's best for Megan. I laughed bitterly. Since when did you care about Megan's best interests, Vanessa? Vanessa's eyes flashed with irritation. We'll provide a stable home environment, something you're not capable of. You think money means stability? I shot back. Save it for someone who doesn't know you. Ethan stepped forward, trying to play peacemaker. Laura, this fight isn't helping Megan. Can't we be civil? You're right, Ethan, I replied, my voice steely. Civility starts with honesty. Megan isn't some pawn. She deserves a consistent, loving home. She can have that with us. Vanessa snapped, her patience wearing thin. Letting out a slow breath, I locked eyes with her. Really? And what happens when you grow tired of playing house? When Ethan no longer entertains you? What then? Vanessa's expression tightened, but she said nothing. Look, Laura, Ethan began, shifting uncomfortably. We just want to co-parent without tension. Then show up for Megan, I countered. Be there when you say you will. Put her first. Prove you're capable of that. Before he could respond, Megan rushed outside, her face lighting up upon seeing her father. Daddy! Megan's tone softened as he scooped her into his arms. Vanessa's smile was forced, clearly uncomfortable with the scene. Can Daddy take me to the park, Mom? Megan asked, her eyes hopeful. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Sure, honey, but remember, it's getting dark soon. Ethan carried Megan towards the car, Vanessa following closely. She glanced back at me, her eyes shooting daggers. You haven't won yet, Laura. Keep telling yourself that, I replied calmly. Just don't drag Megan into your games. They drove off, and I headed back inside, leaning against the kitchen counter, my mind racing. The confrontation had shaken me, but I remained determined to fight for Megan's well-being. That evening, Mark stopped by to check on us. We sat on the porch, the evening air cooling our heated emotions. How did it go with Ethan and Vanessa? He asked, handing me a cup of tea. I recounted the encounter, pausing to let the frustration seep out. Vanessa seems hell-bent on disrupting everything. Mark nodded thoughtfully. She's threatened by you, Laura. Keep pushing, and she'll reveal her true colors soon enough. I hope so, I said. Megan deserves better than this circus. You're doing everything right, Mark reassured. You're a great mom. Don't forget that. The next morning, my lawyer called, informing me of an early court date set for the custody hearing. Staying calm felt impossible, but I steeled myself for what lay ahead. Ethan and Vanessa's manipulations would not go uncontested. With evidence of their negligence and my unwavering determination, I knew we stood a strong chance. The court needed to see the truth, Vanessa's selfishness, Ethan's irresponsibility. As the days approached the hearing, I meticulously gathered every piece of correspondence, every broken promise. Each document brought me closer to securing Megan's protection. Throughout it all, Megan's laughter and joy in simple moments kept me grounded. This battle was for her future, her happiness. Nothing, not even Vanessa's devious schemes, would deter me. The courtroom showdown loomed. Armed with facts and driven by a mother's love, I prepared for the fight of my life, determined to ensure that Megan's world remained safe and stable. The day of the court hearing arrived, and my stomach churned with a mix of anxiety and determination. I kissed Megan goodbye at my parents' house, whispering reassurances that I'd be back soon. She clung to my leg, worry etched on her little face. Mommy, everything will be okay, right? I crouched down, meeting her eyes. Absolutely, sweetie. Everything will be okay. Mark drove me to the courthouse, his steady presence providing much-needed comfort. We walked through the imposing doors, my heart pounding as I spotted Ethan and Vanessa already inside, seated with their lawyer. As the hearing commenced, both sides presented their cases. Ethan's lawyer portrayed him as a dedicated father, conveniently overlooking his late-night absences and drunken escapades. I could feel Vanessa's gaze piercing through me, her unwavering confidence irritatingly evident. When it was my turn, my lawyer, Miss Bennett, laid out the facts, Ethan's inconsistencies, his recent behaviors, and the character testimonies, including Jennifer's. Mrs. Stevens has presented incontrovertible evidence, Miss Bennett concluded. It's evident that maintaining primary custody with Laura is in Megan's best interest. Ethan stood, adjusting his tie nervously. Your Honor, I love my daughter. I've made mistakes, but I'm trying to be better. Vanessa and I can provide her with a stable home. At that moment, Vanessa took the stand, her demeanor icy and calculated. I care for Megan as if she were my own, she claimed. Laura is using this custody battle for revenge. I clenched my fists, suppressing the urge to shout. Instead, I focused on projecting calm and composure. The judge, an elderly woman with a stern expression, turned to me. Miss Stevens, do you have any closing remarks? I stood, taking a deep breath. Your Honor, My only concern is Megan's well-being. Her father's actions have been unpredictable and harmful. My home is stable, supported by my parents. Megan's happiness and safety will always be my priority. The judge nodded thoughtfully. This isn't an easy decision, but the child's welfare must come first. I will review the evidence and deliver my verdict shortly. We were asked to wait outside. The tension in the hallway was suffocating. Vanessa paced back and forth, while Ethan sat with his head in his hands. I hope you're satisfied, Vanessa muttered, briefly stopping to glare at me. Disrupting us won't change anything. I'm not trying to disrupt you, I shot back. Just fighting for my daughter. Mark squeezed my shoulder. Stay strong, Laura. Minutes felt like hours until we were called back in. The judge's face gave nothing away as she delivered her verdict. After reviewing the evidence, I grant primary custody to Miss Laura Stevens, she decreed. Mr. Ethan Stevens will have visitation rights on weekends, supervised for the first 3 months. Ethan's face fell, and Vanessa couldn't hide her rage. This is ridiculous, she spat. You're making a mistake. Order, the judge replied firmly. My decision is final. Leaving the courthouse, a wave of relief washed over me. Ethan and Vanessa's plans to disrupt our stable world had been thwarted. They stormed out, Vanessa's fury evident in every step. Ethan, we talked about this, Vanessa hissed. I can't deal with your mistakes anymore. This isn't the time, Ethan replied, his voice strained. Stepping into the sunlight with Mark beside me, I felt vindicated but far from finished. Protecting Megan wasn't just about a court ruling. It was an ongoing battle against the toxic influence of her father and Vanessa. Back at my parents' house, Megan ran into my arms. Mommy, did you win? We're going to be just fine, Meg, I said, hugging her tight. Looking around at the familiar, comforting surroundings, I knew the road ahead would be tough, but I was ready. With Megan's safety and Mark's unwavering support, I felt a renewed sense of strength. The battle for our future was far from over, but love and resilience would guide us through whatever came next. Following the court's decision, Ethan and Vanessa's lives began to unravel swiftly. Word spread about Vanessa's manipulative tactics, thanks to Jennifer's whispers. I heard through the grapevine that Ethan's new job wasn't going as planned either. Their once perfect, stable home fell apart, and it seemed karma was playing its part. One evening, a loud knock interrupted our dinner. To our surprise, Ethan stood there, disheveled and pale. We need to talk, Laura, please, he pleaded, casting a quick glance at Megan. Go to your room, sweetie. I'll be there soon, I told Megan, who hesitated but obeyed. Ethan stepped inside, wringing his hands. Vanessa and I were over, he said, eyes downcast. Do I look like I care? I replied, not bothering to hide my frustration. You dragged us through hell with her. I know. He sighed deeply. She's been cheating on me, lied about several things. I should have seen it coming. Well, what did you expect? I said calmly. She's always been that way. It's more complicated than that, Ethan continued. I've lost my job. I'm broke. I want to be in Megan's life, Laura. She's all I have left. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity, but I stood my ground. Ethan, you've got a lot to prove. Megan needs stability, not more chaos. I'll do whatever it takes, he promised. I gave him a long look before nodding slightly. All right, start by showing up for her consistently. That marked the beginning of Ethan's slow attempt at redemption. I remained skeptical, but allowed supervised visits, ensuring Megan's well-being was always the priority. Meanwhile, Vanessa's downfall was almost poetic. She moved into a rundown apartment, and her reputation at work plummeted. News of her deceitful tactics had spread like wildfire, leaving her virtually unemployable. One afternoon, while picking Megan up from school, I ran into Vanessa. She looked worn out, her confident veneer cracked. Well, if it isn't Laura Stevens, she sneered, though her bravado lacked its usual punch. Vanessa, I responded coolly. Enjoying your new life? Her eyes narrowed. Don't think you've won, Laura. I'll find a way to bounce back, she said, her posture slumped. It was a strange sense of closure to see her like that, defeated yet still full of misplaced pride. As weeks turned into months, Ethan's efforts started to show. He attended Megan's school events, showed up sober, and genuinely got involved. Though the damage couldn't be undone, a new chapter began for us all. One evening as I tucked Megan into bed, she asked, "Mom, will Dad be okay?" "I hope so, Meg," I said, smoothing her hair. "At least he's trying." Mark and I grew closer during this period. One night as we sat on the porch watching Megan play, he turned to me, eyes full of warmth. "You've come a long way, Laura." "Couldn't have done it without you," I replied, gratitude filling my voice. With Ethan's toxic presence slowly fading and Vanessa's manipulations no longer a threat, our home became a sanctuary of peace and growth. I focused on my career, and Megan thrived in the stability we'd built. In the end, the real victory wasn't about seeing Ethan and Vanessa's downfall, but reclaiming our lives. Megan's laughter, our steady routine, and the strength I found in the process were the true rewards. Life moved on, not without scars, but with a resilience that had been hard-won. And as I looked to the future, I felt a sense of hope and empowerment, knowing that we had faced the storm and